So the topic of today's webinar is digital transformation. It's one very hyped word. Everyone talks about digital transformation, but it seems like organizations have very different meaning, what it's supposed to accomplish, how it works, how it doesn't work. And in today's webinar, we hope to clarify this a little bit and just talk a little bit more about how organizations go through the process and what a successful digital transformation looks like. We work with many large enterprises, Fortune 500 companies, top retailers, most recognizable brands, but it seems like whether it's a medium or small size organization or a global brand, marketing challenges tend to be the same. And today we want to talk about structured thinking about addressing some of these challenges. So we are not going to spend as much time as on some of our previous webinars addressing topics, what to do about your high bounce rate or how to increase more conversions on your website, but we'll talk about analytics more in a broader sentence, in a broader sense of that word. How can analytics really transform your business and things that you need to be focused on. A little bit about myself. I am Michael Loban. Did not grow up in the United States, hence the accent, but lived here over the past 15 years. Currently, I serve as CMO of InfoTrust, a global digital analytics consultancy. And this year, InfoTrust has really decided to focus more and more on the education and sharing best practices when it comes to analytics and what successful organizations do well, and how different companies, whether you're a small retail or mega CPG enterprise, can do better with this data. Here's my contact information. There's my email address. I am also a frequent author on the CIO, Adweek, a number of other publications. And for fun, as you can see, I enjoy jumping out of planes. I'm also an avid runner with a hope to one day run a marathon on every continent. I want to start today's webinar with just a little story about St. Jacobs Oil. I doubt that any of us have been alive there in early 19th century, but in the beginning of 19th century, St. Jacobs Oil was the brand to know. They were very successful in their advertisings. As you can see, they even had a steamboat with their logo on it. And the company would sell this type of oil and promote it as a way to solve different challenges with your body. So, for example, if you have pain in your ankles or pain in your knees, this oil was supposed to address all of those. And at one point, they were so successful that they would literally advertise on pieces of bricks on a road. At one point, they decided we don't need actually to do this much marketing because everyone seems to know St. Jacobs Oil, and they decided to stop their ads, and their advertising, their revenue has dropped as well. So although it seemed like everyone knew about the product, there was some correlation between advertising and revenue or in sales. At about the same time, as the advertising industry was maturing, Continental stores started to run these types of one-page ads within the publications. And here you can see the ad for men's and women's products. These stores were run by John Wanamaker. And although you might not be familiar with John Wanamaker himself, most likely you are aware of the quote that he's so famous for. Half the money I spend on advertising is wasted. I just don't know which one. And what's interesting, the reason I bring this up is, although it seems like this has been almost 100 years ago when John Wanamaker would run ad campaigns and did not quite know which ones were successful or not, today, although we have a lot more solutions, we have a lot more tools that are supposed to help us with analytics, we still run into the same issue. So here are some of the companies that you've probably seen in the news lately. and many of them make the news not because everything is going so swiftly and so well, but because many of them are struggling in this digital landscape. Gap, Payless Shoes, many others have been closing their stores. Some organizations have been reporting very slow sales. And so the question comes to mind, well, if we have all the right tools and if data is the new oil, and if all of these technologies, Adobe, Google, and hundreds of others are available to us, then why many organizations are still in such a challenging position when it comes to marketing themselves and attracting the right type of customer? And as we try to answer this question really for ourselves, it kind of came to us that maybe even if data is the new oil, but maybe the problem is not that we don't have enough data or that we need to collect more data, is that we lack structured thinking about how to use data, how to apply this data to addressing common marketing challenges. And through this research, studying hundreds of organizations and understanding what do those that actually win and succeed, what do they do differently, we discovered that it really comes down to 6 components. So a typical digital transformation of one organization is becoming successful in their digital efforts, they tend to follow this model. And in today's presentation, we'll talk about each one and how your organization can really leverage this model to become even more successful in digital marketing and in digital analytics. And the first thing that companies do when it comes to digital analytics that makes them successful has actually nothing to do with tools or technologies or conversions, but has everything to do with purpose. Organizations that succeed, they tend to be able to unite the whole company behind the why they are doing this. It's not enough to say, well, we need the digital transformation because we are losing customers. What we need to do is determine what is the ultimate end goal for our organization and why do we embark on this journey, because it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of competition externally and internally. And we really need a very compelling why to understand what is that we are after. So you have to start with this why, and why do we want to accomplish this as an organization? And as the way to demonstrate this, I wanted to use the quote of John Chambers, who was a very successful former Cisco CEO. Ultimately, you want to compete against the market transition, not just around your competitors. So doing a digital transformation simply for the sake of being better than your competition might be good at overcoming that competitor, but might not really prepare you for the next 10, 15, 20 years of disruption that is going to take place. So we need to get better at using digital to compete with what's coming. And some of the reasons that organizations do this, so some of the common answers to the question of what is our purpose or what is the purpose of digital transformation, organizations tend to focus on profitability. So can we be more profitable as a business? Can we increase our customer satisfaction? Can we increase our speed to market or improve the experience of our customers? So at the end of the day, digital transformation is supposed to help our business grow, supposed to help our business evolve. And that's what we really need to be able to connect, right? What we are doing online with how it actually impacts our business and our bottom line. A lot of times organizations are so busy kind of fighting in trenches and worrying about email sign up and a newsletter conversion rate that they lose sight of how this plays into the big picture. And when we begin working with organizations, we tend to start this kind of one-page plan of at least getting this on a piece of paper so everyone within the organization can see what the 5-year audacious goal is, right? So what is our moonshot goal of why we are doing this? What is our 1-year goal? Because it tends to be something that we actually worry about, right? Because it's tricky for us to pay attention only to 5-year objectives, right? We need to make something that is right around the corner. After 1-year goal, we focus on our 30-day goal, right? So how can we take our plan and make it actionable within the next 30 days? And then we focus on proof. What evidence can be provided to our teams that the moonshot and that our goal is actually possible? It's fascinating that when companies go through the process of digital transformation or becoming better with analytics, they're actually not measuring it. So when we talk about digital transformation, first and foremost, we have to determine how are we actually going to measure our progress. And then we have our action plan. So what are the things that we can be doing right now over the next 30 days, over the next year to make this possible? Once we define our purpose and what is it that we want to be focusing on, then we have our 3 P's of execution. So these are 3 levers that we can use when we begin any type of transformational project within the organization. We have people, we have platforms that we'll be using, and processes that we'll be following. Now, interestingly enough, as we look at those 3 P's, we cannot do all 3 at the same time. So we can't focus on platforms and processes and people all at once. So looking at our business, we need to understand what is the bigger priority right now. And a lot of times organizations believe that their gap is platforms, that we do not have the right tools, that we need yet another solution, or we need cloud for marketing, or we need an email automation system, whatever that might be. What we found, however, is that companies that tend to be most successful, they first and foremost, they focus on people. And this has been found true by Jim Collins in his famous book, Good to Great, when he says that leaders of companies that go from good to great, they start not with where, but with who. They start by getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. We also need to make sure that we are properly staffed and have the right team composition to take on any type of digital transformation project. Otherwise, many of us often find sitting in a meeting where an executive might say, we need to do this, and we realize that our team just does not have the people power or might not have the right resources, but no one is really talking about this. Everyone is focused on that long-term vision and getting new solutions in place, instead of really asking ourselves the question, well, who on the team is actually competent and capable of doing this? And if we don't have those people, how do we either train them, or how do we find the right types of partners and right types of people that we can bring on board? I don't know if this is the case in your company, but very often when I meet with different executives and we talk about data, I ask a very simple question, who within your organization is actually responsible for all the data? And I'm surprised by how many people don't know the answer. Somebody will say, well, I'm responsible for CRM data. Somebody will say, I'm responsible for digital data, but this does not include the login data. Somebody might say, well, I'm responsible for only offline and call center data. Very few organizations actually have a single person who is responsible for customer data. Hence, our data sets are so fragmented that we have multiple people. Those people have different priorities, and projects that often talk about customer centricity and bringing all the customer data sets together end up either not being successful or taking years, not because the technology is not there, but because people cannot agree on who is actually in charge. So that's why we want to get this out of the way first. We need to have the right people in our digital transformation bus, and these people need to be able to make these types of decisions. When it comes to digital analytics transformation, or really any transformational project, majority of organizations tend to suffer from indigestion. So it's not that we don't have enough good ideas, or we are not quite sure what we should be focusing on, is that we tend to take on too much, and we do not have the right types of people who are trained accordingly executing. Once we have the right types of people, then the question becomes, well, what platforms do we need to have to make an impact? And when we look at the platforms and what organizations tend to measure with these platforms, it's very often very clear that the metrics and the KPIs that we tend to worry about are very transactional. On daily basis, we report how our click-through rate is, we report how many visitors we get per month, what the bounce rate looks like, how our conversion rate has changed months over months. And all of these metrics are the right ones. But the issue is that these metrics are often transactional and short-sighted. The question that really becomes is, how do we focus on our real success, not just first conversion? How do we get customers that will generate most revenue or become most profitable for our business over the next 3, 4, 5 years? So we need to build a platform that is able to connect our customers across different platforms. So when we think about building our own digital marketing platform, we should think about it in 3 different compartments working together. So on one side, we have online advertising, and we have different marketing channels. We have our display, we have mobile marketing, video advertising, search, email, social, and often a lot more different platforms. On the other side, we have our CRM, right, where our user data set actually lives. It can be a data warehouse, it can be your CRM platform, it can be your ERP program. And very often these 2 solutions are disjointed. So inside of our CRM, we actually don't know what marketing channels brought those customers in. And we are not able to online retarget people based on their offline activity, offline sales. And so what we need is ability to connect these 2 data sets with the single customer view of analytics, which exists in the middle. So we have our digital analytics suite. Very often we have our tag management platform, which we can use to deploy and properly manage all third-party tags. We have our site app optimization platform, such as Optimizely or Google Optimize, and we have our data warehouse. And as you can see, the goal of this is not just to make sure that all the data exists in one place, but that data flows between these 3 types of solutions. So we can use our offline data for online marketing. We can capture our online marketing as part of our user record within our CRM. So then later we can activate these powerful segments. Now, what's interesting is our ability to run ads, not just based on online information or customer online behavior, but based on the CRM data, tends to make our advertising just that much more powerful. So Salesforce is reporting that CRM-powered ads are 47% more effective than traditional targeting. That is a massive increase. And if you think about it, why? Well, it's because your CRM data, first-party data, it's a lot more accurate. It can be a lot more actionable. And it allows your ads to be that much more targeted. So that's what you really want to accomplish with your platform, is to build a solution that is, 1, scalable, and that is able to connect the customer data points regardless of where the customer experience takes place. One of the terms that recently began to emerge when people are talking about platforms is creating something that is uncluttered. Way too often we have tags, pixels, platforms on our website of solutions that we don't even know what they're supposed to do, not to mention don't have an owner. So as we continue to spend more and more on digital analytics, often the solution is to do more with less. Perhaps the job should be more focused on data integration and automation, not adding new products. Because if you add yet another product to your solution, then your people need to master it, need to learn it, need to figure out how to apply it. And as a result, very often when companies end up buying a new product, they are not actually using 100% of its features, but end up using only 20, 25%. So you end up paying for the whole product while using just a small percentage of features. One of the things that we've also noticed that companies do is think about a digital platform in a sense of their business maturity. So what do we need if our business is just getting started with digital? We can say crawling. What do we need when our business is really working and running? And everyone talks about machine learning and how cool it would be to completely automate our marketing and be able to forecast our sales and then based on our forecast run advertising campaigns. But you might not be quite there yet. So what we need to do is tie where we are as a business in our digital savviness, or in terms of how fast we are currently able to move. And then how do we progress through this spectrum instead of just trying to do too much at once? And one of the things that we are doing is a webinar just on this topic. So next week, my colleague, Brad Pranga, is doing a webinar with Sharu Singhal from Google, where they will talk about how top companies progress through digital analytics journey and what you need to do to get started, as well as to get your business to the next level. But please don't try to do everything at once. So our third P is processes. At this point, we have the right types of people, we have the right types of platforms. Now the question is, well, how do we use them the right type of way? And we only have about 20 to 30 minutes to talk about processes, so it's impossible for me to talk about every process within the organization. But what we'll do is we'll talk about two processes that tend to be very actionable and very popular right now, processes that organizations tend to pay attention to. Now, the first process or methodology that companies focus on is tech management and governance. More and more organizations recognize that they're being slowed down by cluttered the digital stack, and they need to build a process to simplify it. Not to mention that if we look at digital analytics over the past 20 years, we went from putting different tags, tracking on our website, to container tags, to more and more issues of piggybacking, customers being upset, customers not knowing what happens to their data. And we are moving to place where now governments around the world are taking charge and putting together different regulations that companies need to follow. And so the first and foremost process that we need to be mindful of is how do we become the organization that doesn't just focus on targeting and tracking, but organization that is mindful of the customer's privacy and does good marketing. So we are in this side of being a responsible marketing. And so why tech governance now? Why is this such a big topic today? Well, there's GDPR, there is e-privacy, there are different industry regulations. new laws that are coming from California, and most likely there will be new regulations that are coming not just from California, but from other states. As we continue to see some of these new changes in regulations, we also have to be mindful in how do we invest in media, right? What we can track, and how this impacts our site performance, how this impacts our agility and overall marketing. And so with that, the first process that organizations focus on today is process of tech governance, being able to create a global tech policy, establish roles and organizational ownership of data, which we already discussed when we've talked about people, talked about processes and compliance. So how do we develop process for monitoring compliance with tech policy, and how do we monitor all of this to ensure that we know what information is actually being collected about our customers, about our website visitors every time they come to the website, or every time they engage with our brand, regardless of what touch point. Now, the second process or approach that organizations tend to focus on is the question around the long-term value of their customer, right? Because if we can determine customer CLV, customer lifetime value, then it can make drastic changes to where we invest our advertising dollars. And so focus on CLV is our ability to, one is measure the present value of the future net cash flow transactions associated with the customer. So not just how much person has spent with us and with our brand up to this point, but what is our projection? How much money can we generate from the customer in the near future? The reason this is so important is we can't spend advertising dollars on just bringing more and more customers, even if those customers are not going to shop with us after that one transaction. A lot of organizations tend to overspend on generating one-time transaction and underspend on generating a lifelong customer. Not to mention that your most loyal customers are worth up to 10 times the value of their first purchase, yet 75% of customers only transact once. One of the reasons it seems like organizations focus more on measuring conversions, any type of conversion, is their lack of understanding of what a long-term customer worth to their business. This information about customer CLV can greatly impact how we tend to advertise. Right? If we are targeting our high CLV customers, then we know these are the ones that make frequent purchases. They tend not to pay as much attention to discounts. They tend to be members of our loyalty program, and we need a very different messaging, advertising, targeting them. The next segment is we have medium CLV customers, those that need ongoing attention, those that need ongoing nurturing. They might not be 100% convinced of the value, so we constantly have to remind them. And then we have our low CLV customers, and those might be the ones that only shop with your brand once a year when there is a 50% offer or some kind of Black Friday discount. Understanding your customer CLV can help you target the right type of message for the right type of audience. Now, I'm not saying that you only should focus on 10% of your customers, hence the ones that are most profitable for your business, but you can certainly make the decision on how to prioritize your marketing efforts and where to spend most dollars. But when you merely report on a weekly basis that you generated this many conversions or this many sales, we tend to forget that not all conversions are created equal. And sometimes we should be spending a lot more on acquisition if we know that this type of customer will generate a lot more value for our business in the foreseeable future. In terms of how we measure CLV, well, measurement of CLV takes into account a couple of components. One is we look at churn risk, we look at purchase propensity, look at historical spending habits, historical value, and all of that, analyzing all of those data points, we come up with a customer lifetime value. There are a number of different models that we can use, and there is no right or wrong model, but what you want to do is take your data set and run a test to determine if your CLV estimation is actually accurate with your real data. And once you find the model that tends to work right and is the accurate one, then you can apply the same mathematics to the rest of your database. And at the end, you will come up with something that looks like this, where we have our customer records. Then we have information about total past revenue, so how much money the person spent with us up to this point, probability that the customer is active, and then expected sales within the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months, and the total customer lifetime value. And now you can take this information and use it into your targeting. So we already talked about the right types of platform, right, that can take your CRM data, and customer lifetime value lives inside your CRM usually. And then based on this, we can build audiences in solutions like Google Analytics and apply that to targeting and in our online marketing. Now, at the end of these different types of project or initiatives, at the end of any type of digital transformation, we need to be able to see concrete results. Focusing on CLV can be great, finding the right people is very important, but we still have to determine any type of digital transformation, how will this impact our business? Now, when we think about digital transformation, there are usually two major metrics of success. Number one is pace. Can our organization do things better, faster, and more efficiently than before? If before it takes us 1 week to analyze our monthly sales data, that is too long. Can we use automation? Can we use predictive modeling to be able and do this within a day or within 30 minutes? Because if we are able to make decisions faster, we can run, we can execute faster, we can outpace our competition. But yet very few companies actually focus on measuring how much time it takes them to make right marketing decisions. And the other one is certainly payoff, our ability to be more profitable as a business. So metrics to measure our success. Well, one is revenue and obviously improving our bottom line. So can we generate more revenue from our perhaps existing client base? Can we deliver the right type of customer experience? Right? Ultimately, can we make the life of our customer better with digital tools that are available to us? And as I mentioned, our pace or operational improvement or excellence, being able to perform particular tasks more efficiently now. And these three tend to work together. So it will be very unlikely that you can really improve your bottom line and grow revenue by pissing off your customers, right? So you have to delight your customers, you have to serve your customers in order for them to spend more money with your brand, hence improving your bottom line. And if you're able to do that successfully, then most likely you're improving your operational excellence because your company gets in the habit of using data better than before. One of the people that I tend to follow online and whose online or whose papers on digital transformation and digital marketing I tend to read is Yang Shim from EY Americas, and he talks about the unrelenting focus on the customer. It's something that we absolutely have to pay attention to. The performance gap, as he points out, is huge between companies that take a more comprehensive and customer-centric approach to digital enterprise transformation, and those that focus solely on cost reduction. So we can't just focus on optimization. We have to determine how do we optimize and make our business more effective while delighting our customers. And at the end of the day, digital transformation, if we think about this, is nothing new. Companies go through transformation, some kind of transformation, almost every 10 or so years. But as John Chambers points out, now companies have to be able to do this every 3 to 4 years. So if you're successful in this digital transformation, it's not that you're just successful with being able to use data better, is that you're able to prepare yourself for the next transformation that will take place. At the end of the day, companies have to become much better through digital or business evolution, constantly determining how they can respond to disruptions that are taking place in the marketplace and how they can become disruptors themselves. You can't simply be a complacent player. You have to constantly determine how do we reinvent ourselves. And this is where data can play such a pivotal role for an organization. So in summary, where does this leave us? Well, first of all, we need to measure and plan for long-term success. We already talked about customer lifetime value. We cannot simply focus on one-time transactions. We have to determine what our business needs to look like in the next 4, 5, 6 years, and what types of customers will take us there. We need to build a scalable and uncluttered platform that meets the demands of our business and also allows us to properly ensure data privacy and meet the regulations that are currently taking place and that will begin taking place in the near future. Companies succeed by having the right people and making sure that these people are trained. And we always have to be very mindful of how analytics can contribute to the bottom line, because as those that work in the digital space, analytics space, as we constantly have to fight for budgets, we have to be able to explain how data will actually contribute to the bottom line. We tend to think that this is obvious, but a lot of times it really isn't. So the more eloquent and more articulate we are at explaining how this will transform the business, easier and better it will be for our organization. And in light of this, as certainly there's a lot that we need to be mindful of, we have a number of other programs that are coming up on the topic of digital analytics. Kind of call them the spring of Google Analytics 360. And you can learn more here. We'll also send out a summary email with the link to this list of events. We have live events that are taking place in cities like New York, San Francisco, Chicago, Atlanta, and we have a lot of other upcoming webinars. So I hope this was helpful. I hope you'll be able to attend some of our next events. And I'm now open this to questions if you have any. So the first question from Alan, how do we know where we are in a crawl, walk, run spectrum? You shared in the platform section. Absolutely. So the first step is to look at the model, and you'll have access to that model. We can actually look at it right now. And see what your business is doing right now. So we can start talking about forecasting. We can start talking about machine learning. But if currently the business is struggling with some of the basic executive dashboards, you will be able to pinpoint where you are today. So looking at this diagram, you will see some of the examples of what the organization is doing at each stage. So if you find yourself that currently you do not have a tech governance strategy in place, you are not quite sure what platforms are actually present on your website, this will be the first area to focus on. Now, if you want more specifics, I would certainly need to take a closer look at the platforms that you currently have in place, how you're going through the process of digital analytics and marketing, and we'll be able to answer that question in much more greater detail. But this would be a starting ground, is to look where you are right now in terms of the types of processes that you're occupied with on a daily basis, and that will help you determine where you are and where you need to be. Andrea is asking, are many companies currently using or measuring customer lifetime value? I would say so. I would say out of organizations that we work with, probably better half is at least beginning to ask this question. So many still do not have the right maybe number in terms of what the customer lifetime value is for each of their customers, but they're beginning to plan for this and determine what their marketing will look like once they have that information. And customer lifetime value does not have to be a massive undertaking for your organization. You can start with doing just a sample of taking 10% of your customers, customer records, and doing this type of analysis on that sample and determine, are we learning something new by having this customer lifetime value? Can we change, can we modify our marketing with this information? And then if so, you can do the customer lifetime value analysis for all of your customer records. Next question is, what was the link for the next webinar, the one with Google? Great question, Chris. Here you have it. I will also post the link in a chat panel that so you can see it. And we have another question. You talked a lot about tags. Is there a way to easily see what tags are currently on my site right now? A great question. So the platform that you can use, we often use Tag Inspector, and if you can do this for free, try for free. You can run a scan of your website using Tag Inspector. Right, here you can create your free account to run the scan, and it will give you a full analysis of tags or pixels that you have present on your website. And then if you want more details, you can contact us. You can email me with additional questions. But let me post both links in the chat panel so everyone can see them. Could I share the PowerPoint? Next question from Gilmar. Absolutely, we will share the slides. So here's the first link to everyone with Tag Inspector, and here is the link to all of our upcoming webinars and programs. Great. Any other questions? Well, I hope this was valuable. Again, I hope to see you at the future events, webinars. If you have any questions, please feel free to either post on the channel or email me directly. And let me just... with that, we'll stay online for a few more minutes, but if there are no other questions, I hope this was valuable. Thank you everyone for joining us.